The courtroom was tense as the judge called the session to order, signaling the start of a highly anticipated hearing that had already captivated social media. At the center of this legal storm were Claressa Shields, the undefeated boxing champion, and Papoose, the seasoned rapper known for his long-standing career and marriage to Remy Ma. The case filed recently by Shields alleged a series of deeply personal violations that had both legal and public repercussions. On the opposing side, Tasha K., the controversial social media personality and gossip commentator, claimed to possess evidence relating to a potential HIV transmission, alleging that Shields had been affected following interactions with Papoose. From the very beginning, the case drew attention for its unusual combination of sports, celebrity culture, and health-related claims. The first day of the hearing began with procedural motions, but the courtroom was buzzing over what Tasha K. described as documented proof she claimed to have collected over the last few months, according to court filings obtained by media outlets. Tasha K. alleged that she had concrete evidence linking Papoose to a pattern of behavior that could have put Shields at risk. These claims, sensational as they were tempered by the judge's insistence on verification, prompting Tasha K. to present her initial documentation for review. The legal representatives for Shields entered the courtroom with a clear agenda: to protect their client's privacy, ensure the integrity of medical information, and pursue justice against any potential wrongdoing. Shields' lawyer emphasized that the case was not just about celebrity gossip, but about serious allegations that had profound implications on the health and personal life of their client. Early on, they requested that the court enforce strict confidentiality regarding any medical evidence, citing the sensitive nature of HIV-related claims. This request was met with nods from the judge, who made it clear that any public discussion of the evidence would require court approval. Meanwhile, Tasha K., known for her unfiltered approach to celebrity news, maintained her stance that the public had a right to know about the situation. In her statements outside the courtroom, she claimed to have screenshots, texts, and other proof demonstrating that Papoose had allegedly engaged in risky behavior that could have led to the alleged HIV exposure of Shields. Tasha K. framed her involvement as protective, asserting that she was acting in the public interest while also highlighting that Shields might have unknowingly been at risk. The statements immediately went viral, sparking a flurry of reactions on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Social media users were split, some condemning Tasha K. for allegedly exploiting a sensitive health issue, others praising her for allegedly bringing truth to light. The legal proceedings, however, were much more structured than the chaos online. The judge reminded all parties that allegations needed to be substantiated with factual evidence and that hearsay or speculation would not be considered sufficient. This distinction became a critical point as Shields' legal team pressed for verified medical records and credible sources rather than social media claims. The judge also emphasized the importance of privacy for all involved, instructing the press to avoid publishing any material that might compromise the identities of individuals implicated in medical claims. During the testimony portion of the hearing, Tasha K. provided her initial documentation, while the exact details were not fully disclosed to the public. Sources reported that the evidence included digital communication records, alleged medical notes, and eyewitness statements that purportedly linked Papoose to behaviors considered high risk for HIV transmission. The judge, while reviewing these materials, noted inconsistencies in some of the evidence, asking Tasha K.'s legal counsel to clarify sources and authenticate the documents. This exchange highlighted the complexity of the case. While sensational in nature, the claims required careful legal scrutiny to separate truth from rumor. Shields' legal team also pushed back on several claims made by Tasha K. in public forums. They argued that certain statements were potentially defamatory, emphasizing that public allegations about someone's health could have irreversible consequences. The lawyers were particularly concerned about the viral spread of information on social media, warning that unverified claims could damage reputations and incite unnecessary public panic. In response, the judge stated that the court would weigh the evidence carefully, ensuring that only verified documentation influenced the proceedings. Outside the courtroom, the media coverage escalated rapidly. News outlets began reporting the claims in real time, with headlines focusing on the alleged HIV-related evidence. Analysts debated the legal and ethical implications of the situation, highlighting the challenges of handling personal health allegations involving high-profile figures. Social media influencers and commentators also jumped into the discussion, dissecting Tasha K's credibility, Papoose's past behavior, and Shield's career history. Hashtags related to the case trended globally, bringing widespread attention to the legal battle. The hearing also revealed the broader implications for both celebrities and social media personalities. Experts noted that the case could set precedents for how sensitive health information is handled in public allegations. Legal analysts emphasized that while Tasha K claimed to have evidence, courts prioritized verified medical documentation over social media posts or hearsay. This distinction became particularly significant because the claims involved potential HIV exposure as subject, requiring utmost sensitivity and accuracy. The case, therefore, was not just a clash of celebrity reputations, but also a test of legal standards surrounding personal health and public information. As part one of the proceedings concluded, the judge scheduled a follow-up session mandating that Tasha K provide authenticated proof of her claims within a specific time frame. The court also instructed both parties to refrain from further public commentary that could influence the perception of evidence or the fairness of the case. While the courtroom itself was tense, outside, the discussion continued to rage, with fans, critics, and commentators analyzing every detail. The question remained, could Tasha K substantiate her claims sufficiently to impact the legal process? Or would Shield's legal team successfully defend against allegations grounded in social media speculation? Part 1 closed with the sense that the story was just beginning. It's a combination of celebrity influence, health-related claims, and viral social media attention created a perfect storm, making it one of the most discussed legal battles of the year. The next hearing promised to bring additional revelations, as the court would demand verified proof and clarity regarding the alleged HIV evidence, a turning point that could determine the trajectory of the case for delicate balance between freedom of speech and the protection of individual privacy. Tasha K, who had made numerous statements online, was explicitly warned to avoid any posts that could be interpreted as targeting Shields or Papoose outside the legal proceedings. The media, however, continued to fan the fire. Social media feeds were flooded with speculation about the authenticity of Tasha K's evidence. Videos dissecting her claims went viral, with commentators debating the likelihood of each scenario. Some outlets portrayed Tasha K as a whistleblower, trying to protect the public, while others criticized her for sensationalizing sensitive health matters. This public scrutiny added another layer of pressure on the court, which emphasized that online discourse should not influence legal determinations. During cross-examination, the credibility of Tasha K's sources became a central issue. The judge questioned whether the witnesses cited in her documentation were reliable, whether the messages could have been manipulated, and whether any medical evidence could be independently verified. Tasha K maintained that her team had corroborated the information as thoroughly as possible and that the evidence was genuine. However, Shield's lawyers pressed the point that without verified medical records or professional confirmation, the claims were speculative at best. A particularly tense moment came when Tasha K attempted to present a series of alleged conversations between Papoose and unnamed individuals, suggesting knowledge of potential health risks. Shield's attorneys immediately objected, claiming that the messages were not authenticated and could not be used as proof. The judge sided with them temporarily, requesting that any future messages be verified through legal procedures before inclusion. This marked a significant turning point in the proceedings, while Tasha K's claims had grabbed public attention. The court emphasized that only verified evidence would influence its rulings. Outside the courtroom, reactions continued to escalate. Fans of Shields expressed outrage at the public discussion of her personal health, while Papoose's supporters defended him against what they described as unfounded allegations. Commentators debated the ethics of social media involvement in legal cases, noting that Tasha K's influence had effectively turned a private matter into a global spectacle. Legal experts weighed in on the potential consequences, suggesting that the case could set a precedent for how future celebrity health claims are handled in court. As the hearing progressed, the court turned its attention to Tasha K's motivations, while she publicly framed her actions as protective and informational. Shields' legal team suggested that her involvement was driven by profit and notoriety. They cited her history of monetizing celebrity gossip as evidence that the claims might have been exaggerated for attention. Tasha K countered that her goal was never to harm Shields, but to expose potential risks that could affect her and the public. The judge listened carefully to both sides, acknowledging that motivations could influence the credibility of evidence, but ultimately reiterating that factual proof remained paramount. The session concluded with a clear directive. Tasha K was ordered to submit fully authenticated documents, including verified medical records, sworn witness statements, and corroborated communication logs. Any failure to comply would result in the court dismissing unverified claims and potentially imposing sanctions. Shields' legal team left the courtroom confident that the upcoming review would favor their client, emphasizing the difficulty of substantiating health-related allegations through social media channels alone. By the end of Part 2, the story had escalated far beyond a typical celebrity dispute. The combination of alleged HIV evidence, social media influence, and legal scrutiny created a multifaceted drama. Observers noted that the case highlighted the tension between public curiosity and private rights, as well as the legal challenges of addressing health-related allegations in the digital age. The next phase promised to be even more critical, with the submission of authenticated proof set to determine whether Tasha K's claims could withstand legal scrutiny or would be dismissed as sensationalized speculation. Part 2 closed with anticipation of the next hearing, where the court would meticulously examine each piece of evidence, confront inconsistencies, and consider expert testimony. The stakes were higher than ever. The reputations of Claressa, Shields, and Papoose, the credibility of Tasha K, and broader discussions about privacy and media responsibility were all on the line. The third hearing began with heightened intensity, as the court prepared to examine the evidence that Tasha K had submitted after the judge's previous orders. This was the moment that many in the public and media had been waiting for, the point at which the claims regarding Claressa, Shields, Papoose, and the alleged HIV exposure would face rigorous legal scrutiny. Shields' attorneys entered the courtroom ready to challenge each document and message, emphasizing that the stakes were not only about reputation, but also about the sensitive nature of health-related allegations. Tasha K's legal team opened by presenting what they described as verified communications and timelines, claiming that their evidence demonstrated a pattern of risky behavior that could have led to potential exposure. However, the court immediately focused on the authenticity of these submissions. The judge requested certification of medical documents from recognized health professionals, clarification on timestamps of messages, and verification of witness identities. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. Every statement made had the potential to sway both legal judgment and public perception. Shields' lawyers were meticulous in their cross-examination. They highlighted discrepancies in message metadata, questioned the credibility of anonymous witnesses, and noted that some medical documents were not properly certified. They argued that presenting unverified or manipulated evidence could be considered defamatory, potentially opening Tasha K to legal consequences. Allegations about someone's health cannot be made casually. especially in a courtroom setting, one attorney stated firmly. The judge nodded, emphasizing that while the court recognized the seriousness of Tasha K's claims, substantiation was critical before any conclusions could be drawn. Meanwhile, Papoose's legal team focused on protecting his personal and professional reputation. They stressed that the repeated public dissemination of unverified claims could be harmful, particularly given the serious nature of HIV allegations. They filed motions to restrict Tasha K from posting updates on social media regarding the case, arguing that ongoing commentary risked influencing public opinion and prejudicing the legal process. The judge agreed to a temporary order limiting public commentary until the evidence had been formally reviewed. This was a pivotal moment, as it demonstrated the court's willingness to enforce boundaries against the viral spread of potentially harmful information. A critical aspect of the hearing involved expert testimony from medical and digital forensics professionals. Health experts were called to assess whether the alleged medical records provided by Tasha K were legitimate, while digital analysts examined the authenticity of messages and timestamps. These testimonies were crucial, as they determined whether the evidence could be considered credible. The experts' opinions were not always aligned. While some documents appeared legitimate, a dramatic moment came when one of Tasha K's alleged witnesses took the stand under oath. This individual provided testimony claiming firsthand knowledge of interactions between Papoose and other parties that might have led to potential HIV exposure for Shields. However, under intense cross-examination, the reliability of this witness was challenged due to inconsistencies in recollection and incomplete records. Shields' legal team seized on these discrepancies, arguing that the testimony was insufficient to establish a direct risk or infection. The judge carefully reminded the courtroom that only fully corroborated evidence could influence the legal outcome. The hearing also explored broader implications of the case for media and celebrity culture. Legal commentators noted that social media had transformed private disputes into public spectacles, with real-world legal consequences. The court emphasized that the virality of Tasha K's claims did not equate to legal validity. Authenticity and verification were paramount. This highlighted a central lesson of the case. While digital platforms enable rapid dissemination of information, courts remain grounded in evidence and due process. By the end of Part 3, the situation had grown increasingly complex. The court had acknowledged some elements of Tasha K's evidence as credible, but had also rejected numerous claims due to insufficient verification. Shields and Papoose's teams were largely satisfied with the progress, emphasizing that the protection of personal and medical privacy remained a top priority. Tasha K, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure to fully authenticate her materials or risk losing her position in the case entirely. The third hearing concluded with the judge outlining the next steps. Tasha K was required to submit any remaining verified evidence and provide sworn affidavits from credible sources. The court also reminded all parties that any further misrepresentation or unverified public statements could result in legal consequences, including fines or other sanctions. The directive was clear. The focus must remain on facts, documentation, and credible testimony rather than speculation or social media-driven narratives. As Part 3 closed, the story had evolved into more than a celebrity scandal. It had become a test of how legal systems handle sensitive health-related allegations in the age of social media. Questions of credibility, verification, and ethical responsibility were now central. With all parties acutely aware that the next hearing could determine the course of the case, the stakes were immense. The reputations of Claressa, Shields, and Papoose, the credibility of Tasha K, and the broader discussion around privacy and media accountability were all in play, setting the stage for what promised to be a decisive part. The fourth hearing opened with palpable tension in the courtroom, as all parties awaited a resolution that could define the trajectory of the case. The judge began by reviewing the evidence that Tasha K had submitted after the prior session, emphasizing that the court's decision would rest entirely on verified documentation and credible testimony. Shield's legal team, prepared and vigilant, remained focused on ensuring the privacy and reputation of their client while challenging any unsubstantiated claims. Tasha K's team attempted to present additional corroborated materials, including further communications and witness affidavits. However, the court scrutinized each piece carefully. Several documents were accepted as partially credible, while others were dismissed due to insufficient authentication. The judge repeatedly reminded all involved that the allegations involved sensitive health information and that any conclusions must be grounded in verified facts. This marked a critical turning point. While Tasha K's claims had driven massive media attention, only legally admissible evidence could shape the outcome. Shield's attorneys took the opportunity to press for final clarity on the alleged HIV-related claims. They emphasized that despite any perceived risk, no verified medical evidence had established that Shields had contracted HIV. The legal team argued that repeated public discussion of the allegations without concrete proof was harmful and potentially defamatory. The court acknowledged these concerns, issuing explicit instructions to restrict public commentary about Shields' health and emphasizing that any further dissemination of unverified claims could result in sanctions against Tasha K. Papoose's legal representatives also addressed the court, reiterating their concern about the reputational damage caused by the viral spread of claims. They highlighted Tasha K's extensive online reach and the potential for misinformation to become permanent public record. The judge responded by warning that social media influence did not supersede legal standards and that any misuse of digital platforms to spread unverified information would be treated seriously. This action underscored the judiciary's commitment to protecting individual rights against the amplification of unverified allegations. Expert testimony played a decisive role in the proceedings. Medical professionals confirmed that certain documents presented by Tasha K lacked proper certification and could not serve as conclusive evidence of HIV exposure. Digital forensic experts identified discrepancies in message metadata and raised concerns about the possibility of manipulation. In light of these findings, the court determined that while some communications were genuine, they did not establish the alleged medical claims. The evidence, although partially credible, ultimately failed to meet the rigorous legal standard necessary to prove that Shields had contracted HIV. The courtroom also addressed Tasha K's motivations and public conduct, while she argued that her intent was to inform the public and protect potential victims. The court noted her prior history of sensational reporting for personal gain. The judge acknowledged that intentions alone could not validate unverified claims, stressing that accountability in handling sensitive information was paramount. Shields' legal team highlighted the emotional and professional impact of the allegations on their client, framing the issue not only as legal, but also as a matter of personal dignity and public responsibility. As the hearing progressed, the court moved to address potential remedies and consequences. Tasha K was instructed to refrain from further public statements regarding Shields' health and to ensure that any remaining evidence submitted adhered to strict verification standards. The judge emphasized that failure to comply could result in fines, restrictions, or other legal penalties. This moment reinforced the principle that even influential social media personalities are bound by the same rules of evidence and accountability as any other party in legal proceedings. Outside the courtroom, the public reaction was immediate and divided. Fans of Shields, for Shields and Papoose, the resolution provided a measure of relief. Shields' reputation was formally protected, and the allegations regarding HIV exposure were legally dismissed due to lack of verified evidence. Papoose, likewise, had a clear legal affirmation that the claims made against him were unsubstantiated in court. Both parties expressed satisfaction with the ruling, emphasizing the importance of privacy, professionalism, and legal integrity. For Tasha K., the outcome was more complicated. While she maintained some credibility for submitting partial documentation, the court's insistence on rigorous verification underscored the limitations of social media influence when confronted with legal standards. Her role in the case sparked a broader conversation about the responsibilities of influencers, content creators, and public commentators in handling sensitive topics. Analysts suggested that Tasha K. would need to recalibrate her approach to reporting, ensuring that future claims were fully verified before public dissemination to avoid further legal repercussions. As Part 4 concludes, the story of Claressa Shields, Papoose, and Tasha K. underscores a critical lesson for the digital age. The intersection of celebrity, social media, and legal accountability is complex and fraught with challenges. Allegations, especially those concerning health, must be carefully verified, responsibly reported, and ethically managed. The courtroom drama may have ended, but the case leaves a lasting impact on how similar situations will be handled in the future, reinforcing the balance between public curiosity, privacy, and the rule of law. The court adjourned with a clear message. Verified evidence and ethical responsibility take precedence over viral speculation. For Shields and Papoose, justice and protection of privacy were restored. For Tasha K., the case became a cautionary example of the limits of influence when weighed against legal accountability. And for the public, the proceedings offered a detailed look into the importance of credibility, verification, and the consequences of blurring the lines between social media commentary and legally admissible evidence.